All right. When you need to aim consciously and when it should be unconscious. Oh, baby. Some more aim train shit. Let me see. I could probably use all of this.
Hi guys, a rather quick one for you today. I saw this question from Mr. Eccles.
Oh, what did I say? Genuine question: as someone who has not changed sense in like 5 years, is it worth experiment changing the off season to try to get a better mouse control, etc.? Aimers, give me your thoughts. Yeah, because why the fuck not? I don't know who this is. EC1S. If I'm gonna guess, either like a Counter Strike or Valorant bro. And if that is the case, is he possibly on a slightly lower sense, like 40, 50, 60, 70-ish? I'm just guessing. So that's like a lot of arm. Yeah, why the fuck not? Do it. Get your wrist up. For sure, man. Get your fingertips up, get your wrist up. For sure. 100%.
Who is a Valorant professional on
Oh,
Twitter.
Val Pro. All right.
And in answering the question, I started to realize there's actually two premises here that, if you understand them, is very helpful. And I think it's two premises that actually I think hurts a lot of people by not understanding them in their aim training journey. And so I wanted to cover it in this video. So firstly, I want to talk about the cycles of aim training. And secondly, I want to talk about the sort of unconscious and conscious relationship that we have with aiming performance,
All
because we need
right.
to understand that too. And if we can understand all of these elements, it starts to help us better define, okay, I'm in this stage of what I'm trying to do with my aim. So that means like I min max and I optimize in these ways because I understand more fundamentally like where I am, like what the process I'm trying to execute is, like why I'm trying to execute this process,
Mm-hmm.
what my brain is actually doing, how I should use my energy and focus to support what my brain is actually doing, as opposed to just being like sitting down and being like, okay, I'm just going to grind some aim trainers and play loads of DMs and then I'm jumping in the
Yeah.
match. Um,
Conscious, like actively trying to get better versus just autopiloting, essentially. Uh, I have done this, and I try not to do this whenever I'm trying to get a better score. Bro, it's fucking hard. It's hard. Not gonna lie, it's hard.
because of course, you know, that can work. And that's, you know, over time, that's going to help you get some improvements. But I'm always about min maxing stuff and trying to really be as efficient as possible.
Much the same way, like people that go to the gym are, or, I mean, come on, like everybody, like I said, everyone that goes to the gym, you know, if it's fucking leg day, what are the chances in your gym bag you have a belt? You have some knee sleeves. You have maybe some weightlifter shoes to like raise your heel up, or maybe there's like some little foam triangles or some shit to like give your foot a little more lift so your knees can go over your feet more. What else? Maybe you got some knee wraps if you lift heavy as fuck. What else? Maybe you need some chalk. You know, all these little things are just little additions to the gym on just legs. There's a ton of other shit that you can just add. And for aim training, oh, do I got the best monitor? Do I got the good mouse pad? Do I got the good mouse? Do I got the good grips? Do I got the good skates? Is my little puck thing out? I gotta save those 2 grams. What else? Is my AC on me, hitting me at the right angle? Is it cool enough? Is it not as humid? Did I wash my mouse fucking pad? Do I got the right sleeve on? All this other shit. Aim Bros tried to min max every little thing. Did I eat my fucking handful of blueberries this morning? All this shit. So it's all in good company.
Also, First things first, understanding the cycles of aim training through the lens of the 4 stages of competency. So we've got
Oh,
our
shit.
4 stages of competency. And we start at the bottom of this, where we are in
Unconscious incompetence. It is literally me at all times.
unconscious incompetence. So we are not conscious as to how much we suck, but we
Yeah.
definitely suck.
You don't know how much you don't know.
And so obviously, you know, it's not a good place to be in, but it really is the bottom. That's
Yeah.
where you start. And then as you become aware of how much you suck, you know, you're starting to see that you're missing shots, and you start to understand that, okay,
And you move up.
I feel like my mechanics or my aim is sort of not on par with the level I'm trying to play at. I'm now aware that this is a problem.
So then you move up the triangle and you go to conscious incompetence.
And now I can be a bit more aware. I can ask some questions. Well, what kind of problem do I have with aim? So you're starting to ask the questions. You know there's a problem. So now you're consciously aware of your incompetence, and you do the analytical phase where you're trying to figure out, okay, what is the problem? Okay, now I understand the problem. What are the solutions to that address?
What is the problem? The problem is you. How do I solve it? You get good.
That problem, that go with that problem. And that's the process you're undergoing. And so then the next process that you undertake is, okay, well, now I'm going to execute the solution. Now I've decided what that solution is. So over time, you've been executing this solution. You're doing your aim training, or you're focusing on things in DM or whatever it might be, and you're improving your technique and your skill. And over time, you know, now you're starting to become consciously competent.
Then you move up the triangle again. Consciously competence. We're getting better. We're slowly getting in there.
So you're having to apply the changes that you're making consciously. It's a conscious effort that you need to do this, either in your aim training or either in your matches, but it's happening. And then eventually we get to the very, very top of the pyramid, which is unconscious competence. And this is now the new...
And this is hopefully where you are doing the good habits mindlessly. You know, you are loosening the grip on your mouse. If you're playing some static shit, you're doing a pretty fast flick, and you're kind of slightly under flicking to hopefully land on the dot. Maybe you missed a little bit and you got to do a slow micro correct to get back on there. Keep your target confirmation really short and sweet. It's literally like a tenth or like 0.2 of a second to confirm that you're on. You click and immediately you're on to the next dot. I mean, shit, if you're playing some like some 3 or 4 like what do you call it? What is it? Not wide wall. Fucking the 6 dots, small dots or whatever. Bro, you need to see the pattern, the roadmap of where you're going to go the moment that shit pops up. You need to know where you're going before you need to go.
Your new normal. This is your new default. You've replaced successfully the old habits with the new ones, the old technique with the improved and new technique. And so that...
Yep. And then you get out of bronze and then you go into silver and then you start the whole process over again. And this is the truest of truths. You have solved some problems to move up to your next desired rank, and then all of a sudden you have new problems. So you're back down in there in the muck. You're lost in the sauce again. Oh shit, how do I get faster? How if I go faster, I'm less accurate. Oh, I got to be more accurate. I got to slow down. I got to speed up. I got to slow down. And it's just a constant circle.
That's kind of the cycle that we're operating in. But I would, again, posit that it's a little bit more complicated than that, because we need to understand how aiming works in our brains effectively. And we can, you know, I'm going to use a very, I mean, that sounds kind of intimidating to say that, because our brains are vastly complex. And I always found it funny how, of all the things in the universe, it's like one of the things we understand the least, yet we all carry it, you know, just in our heads.
I mean, it's this whole triangle thing can be used for any sport, really. Like, let's be honest. It's just real sports are have a more like manly connotation to them. Like, oh, I'm good at soccer, I'm good at football, I'm good at baseball, I'm good at basketball, I'm a pitcher, catcher, I'm a forward, I'm a running back, and so on and so forth. And there are good habits and bad habits associated with all these positions, and every one of these people in these positions have to apply the same fucking triangle.
But that aside, aiming operates like many other systems in the brain. I think breathing is actually fairly analogous, and I will go into why. So we have an unconscious and a conscious element with breathing. So we generally, most of the time, we are doing it automatically without any conscious control. We're not trying to do it. And when we're asleep, we're just breathing, hopefully. And when we are awake, most of the time, we are just breathing unconsciously as we're doing other things. But it's not a system that you have to consciously control. Now, there will be times when you will try to consciously control this system and you will consciously take it over.
Yeah.
And that might be for varying purposes. Maybe it's because you've become very physiologically activated and the adrenaline and all these different things like cortisol and noradrenaline are all rushing through your system. And you're like, oh.
Yep. It's time to clutch up. All your team died. You're the last guy. Oh my God, you're nervous. I have to swing this corner. When I do, there's probably going to be like 1, 2, 3 guys. I got to take them all out or I lose the round. Yeah. Nerves come into play.
Okay, holy fuck. Okay, I've got to calm myself down because my breathing rate and everything, my heart rate's going up like crazy. I'm going to take control and just right the ship here. Or it could be the case that you're doing meditation or something. And I think this is particularly interesting because in meditation, one of the reasons why we have a lot of focus on breathing is because we're trying to do a couple things. One, we're trying to essentially focus our awareness and attention onto one specific thing. And so this is why you also have body scanning as a thing that you do in meditation where, okay, I'm going to kind of bring my awareness, my conscious awareness into my leg and feel what my leg feels and how does it feel? Like, what's the temperature? Like, is there like weight on it? All these different things. And what's interesting about this is that a large part of why this is relaxing is because it's stopping you from being able to focus on it or giving attention to intrusive thoughts, your racing mind, like these varying things.
I forgot like where I read this, but it said something like your unconscious mind can think like 3 or 4 times, maybe 5 times faster than what you are like acknowledging about thinking about. Yeah, it's just you can think way faster. It's kind of like what happens when people just talk. A bunch of things will pop into their head and they want to say it all real quick, but you have to realize you got to slow down in order to come out with something coherent.
Now, the reason why this is particularly interesting in terms of, and why it's analogous, in my opinion, for performance sports and specifically with aiming, is because when we have problems with aiming, what tends to happen in game, our brains tend to think, oh, this is a problem. I'm going to try to consciously take control of this system. Now, what we understand is, or at least my personal experience and what I understand, is that aiming is done at its highest level as a completely unconscious, mechanic. That it's all of our experience of our habit, of our like well-trained habits that's just being executed. And this is very much when
Emphasis on well-trained habits. That is, I would say, a very important, large factor. 100%. You're putting in the time. You got to turn your PC on. You got to boot up Kovacs. You got to boot up AimLab. You got to boot up AimBeast or whatever your favorite little aim trainer is. Whatever, it don't matter. You got to put the time in. Hundreds. Dare I say, thousands of hours. Oh my God, that sounds so daunting.
When people in sports talk about falling back on your fundamentals, in my opinion, this is another way of explaining that. Your fundamentals are the ingrained habits that you have trained with hours and hours and hours of diligent, high quality practice, so that these systems are really high quality. And so when you're just executing,
everybody want to be a top level aimer. Ain't nobody want to click on all these dots.
all the systems that are secondary in nature or more unconscious in nature, like aiming, in my opinion, generally should be when you're performing, are just like really high quality and second nature. And so the reason why I'm bringing this up is because, as I mentioned, there are examples when it is beneficial to us to take over control of our breathing system so that we can, have certain outcomes. Now, similarly with aiming, it's also important to consciously take control of our aim in specific scenarios. We don't perform the best with that, but it is very useful because what we're trying to do when we are trying to improve our aim is we're trying to create new habits. And to create new habits, we oftentimes need to kind of deconstruct the habit that we have and pick out the things that we want to improve. Because aiming, let's say flicking or tracking or whatever it is usually going to be a multitude of different techniques that are all kind of applied together. So what we want to do when we're often doing, aim training, we're trying to isolate our different aspects of our technique so we can improve them and gain edges. So what we want to be doing then is, by consciously taking control when we're trying to make a flick shot in an aim trainer, we're like, okay, I'm going to be really focused on clean lines. That's what I'm trying to achieve right now. And so you just get repetition, high quality repetition on getting clean lines. And although your overall performance will be worse because you're consciously controlling the system, you're trying to create these new pathways, you're trying to create these new habits and behaviors by consciously taking over. And then over time, by working on the lines, working on the micros, working on attention management, like whatever it is that you need to kind of begin to improve, you start to either notice, more problems because you're able to see, okay, is there a struggle here? Is there not? So you can kind of keep, working on it consciously, or it's going to be the case that over time, it actually starts to really take shape and it improves. And then you add all of these small improvements together, and then you get to a spot where, okay, now I'm combining all of these techniques, all of these things together, mushing them all together. And
I'll say this. Anytime I got like a really good PR in any of these like scenarios or the benches or whatever, it felt so effortless. But up until that point, it felt like I had to put in like a monumental amount of, well, not monumental, I mean like a considerable amount of effort to perform the right technique. But when the time came and I actually got the PR, I was like, well, that didn't feel like how I thought it was supposed to feel. It felt smoother. It felt lighter. I kind of was paying attention to my breathing. I kind of wasn't. If I did like a single error, I was able to quickly, like recollect myself and just forget that I even fucked up, and I just kept going. And yeah, I mean, because it's really hard to talk about things with like aim trainers, because the time that you have to do certain things, it's less than a second, it's less than half a second, and it's, even if you like slow shit down, I don't know, it's just hard. I'll say that much.
And then once you're at that stage, you're thinking more about, okay, I need to just learn and execute all of these things together. So you're trying to now shift away from the conscious execution, and you want to transition that conscious execution of the new techniques into the unconscious. And like I said, the high degree of repetition really helps this. But there is this sense, generally speaking, when you're going from conscious competence to unconscious competence.
That's where I think that most people plateau. You're in the top two, like sometimes you're in the conscious competence, but you're trying to like move into that unconscious competence. Maybe you like dip into the flow state for like a couple seconds, and then time slows down. You feel like you hit like 20 targets in 2 seconds, and then all of a sudden the scenario is like, you feel like, oh my god, is this shit like ever gonna end? And it's like, no, only 5 seconds went by, and you just hit fucking like some high ass like kills per second, and it's like, you have to keep this pace. It's like, oh shit, and then you fall out of the flow state, and it's like, then you start to fumble. It's like, oh, I had to do a large ass left flick. I fucking accidentally hit my keyboard. Fuck, it's a good run. I don't want to choke it. I gotta save it and all this shit. Yeah. And I think that's where people plateau, is trying to push everything from conscious to unconscious.
That kind of transition requires some level of conscious execution, but you're trying to, of course, reduce it as much as possible.
Yeah.
So that, because eventually you're replacing the habit, and it needs to be unconscious and second nature. And so this to me is the many phases of aim training, because we start somewhere. We then end up with improved technique, but to get there, we have to have an understanding of when we're consciously executing, when we're consciously taking control of the system, and when we're not. And this is, so going back to, Eccles' tweet, he was talking about changing sense. And one of my, big...
I still say yes. Change your sense. Do some scenarios, different sensitivities. If you're a Valorant guy, I'm just guessing. Your wrist sucks and your arm is really good. You got good fantastic arm speed, probably decent arm smoothness, but your wrist isn't the smoothness, which isn't a bad thing to say, but it's pretty common. My wrist fucking sucks and isn't that smooth, but practice a little bit more.
Big pieces of advice.
Because how about this? If you don't want to do it, your opponents probably are.
To professional players specifically with changing sense is that you need to make sure that you do it in such a manner that you are very used to the sense that you're playing on, or at least you've locked it in for a few 2 to 4 weeks. It definitely depends on the individual, but you just need, the outcome is that when you hit your season, you're starting a season, you need to feel very comfortable with the sense. And it's not that you need to feel like you're super insane with the sense, but the sense needs to feel like second nature. And the reason is because you don't want to teach yourself that changing sense is the solution in game, because it firstly is not. Secondly, you also want it to be the case that you are not giving yourself an excuse for your conscious awareness to take over the execution of aiming. You don't want that to happen, because when you're performing, as we mentioned, you just got to hold your hands up. If you've got shitty aiming habits, you have shitty aiming habits.
Yeah.
You will play worse if you try to consciously control your aim when you're trying to perform in game.
What's that thing? What's that thing that Bruce Lee said in the beginning of one of his movies? He when he was getting quizzed by his teacher or something, and then he held up his fist and he's like, what'd he say? He said something like, "I do not punch. It punches automatically." Or some crazy ass philosophical cool shit. I was like, damn, that's what it needs to be like.
You will play worse. You have worse performance. And the reason, we go back to the breathing analogy, much like with breathing, where we're saying, okay, I'm putting my conscious attention into my breathing for meditation and maybe body scanning, these types of things. Well, that means that your brain is going to be putting less energy and focus and attention and processing power into actually making decisions, into communicating to your teammates, into picking up all of the information so that you have the ability to make the best reads possible, so that you are as dialed in as possible. As soon as you start to take over your aiming system consciously, now you're going to be a weaker player in terms of all of those other factors. So this is a pitfall that many people fall into, is that they think they can fix their aim, but you can't. And I can't really emphasize this enough. You cannot fix anything about your aim when you're actually in the match. Whatever you walked into the match with is what you have.
Yep.
And so we need to make sure that that's what we kind of train ourselves to understand. Because generally speaking, aiming performance, it can be down to so many different things on the day that can be affecting your aiming performance. But because your aiming performance is just what it actually is, like we've described, is think about the stages of competency that I described and how we kind of build our technique. We build it to be habits. We build it to be automatic.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're at the point where it's not doing what we want it to do, you can't suddenly improve an automatic system by consciously taking control over it for this purpose. That doesn't make sense. And so I just really want people to let go of the idea that when you enter the game that you can really do anything about your aim at that point.
Yeah.
The places where you can do stuff about your aim, it's more long-term thinking. We need to think more about, okay, well, my day in, day out process is I've got, these days of the week where I'm putting, maybe 20 minutes into some technique work, and I'm doing 10 minutes of like pure warm-up, and then I'm doing my playing session. And then maybe at the end of the day, I've got some review or some notes that will inform what I will be focusing on in my future technique sessions. But that's where the aim is improving, is the technique sessions, and then how you try to transition the
I mean, he's just spitting facts at this point. Your aim gets better when you're training. Your aim doesn't get better in the match. That's why it's called training.
technique sessions into the DMs that you're playing. That's where your aim is improving or not improving. But you cannot do anything about aim when you're in the match. When you're in the match, if you're not hitting shots, don't get pissed off at your aim. Instead, double down on focusing on how to solve problems in the game. If you're having confidence problems, understand that winning fights, although it might give you some extra bits of confidence and it may help you feel better about your aim, in reality, thinking like that is already a red flag, because what you're going to start doing now is you're going to make decisions oriented around taking fights and your confidence, not oriented around winning the rounds for your team or responding the best way to the opponent's strategy or responding the best way to what your team is experiencing and solving problems as a team. Instead, what you're doing is actually very self-centered in this very negative sense, in that you're trying to capture your own confidence and at the same time making strategic decisions that are poor. So I hope that this is like a good way to help you guys understand exactly where you might be putting that conscious focus, what it's good for, where it's not good, and how it all kind of feeds into the overall process of the 4 stages of competency. So the last thing that I'll say to kind of cap off the video is that, a question that many people may have with regards to all of this is that, hey, pros don't understand a lot of these ideas or have a lot of these processes, and they got really good. And I would say to that's true. That's completely true. But I will also say that,
I mean, how each professional player got to where they were, everybody has their own little like unique story. Like, and to try to pigeonhole one and to use it as like the end all be all is kind of silly to me. Like, it's ridiculous. Like, it's the same thing with kind of like working out, like bodybuilding. Like, yeah, if you see someone like massive in the gym, there's like various reasons, but do they work out the smartest? Do they go to failure? Do they do, full range motion and all this other shit? You'd be very surprised at how much, like, just like bro knowledge or bro splits, like bro gym, like just workout culture is, even in like the tippy top levels of like bodybuilding and whatnot. Trying to put in the most effort for the most return. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I'm trying to put in the least amount of effort for the most desirable outcome. Newsflash, everybody that's competing wants to be number one. All right? But when I say put in the least amount of effort, I don't mean like do literally nothing. That's like a whole other topic for the video, but I mean, let's just keep going.
This is one reason why we have a lot of resistance from the pro community, because they got to that level by just doing their own thing. And in many cases, doing their own thing just means playing a shit ton. And the thing is that works. It definitely works. But that only works for a certain population in the playing demographic.
Yeah.
And the reason why it works for a certain population is because they are talented or gifted. But what does that mean?
Oh, he said they talented and they don't work hard. Oh, shit. You better be careful who you say that to. Those motherfuckers come in to find that as an insult. That's like the funniest shit. Like, anybody that competes in like any sort of like sport or competition, they hate when they get accused of being talented or gifted, because it diminishes all the hard work that they put in. So, I don't know. I just find that funny. And the whole idea of like aim training is to not rely on a talent and giftedness. The whole idea with aim training is that you put in the work and you get eventually some sort of, outcome, your desired outcome for whatever like bench or rank that you're trying to get. That's the whole concept of aim training. Put in the work, you will get better.
That probably means that they have an affinity for, improving at certain things. Like, for example, it is often the case that people that can get good at stuff naturally, they can get good at lots of shit. There are specific people that are really good at getting good at one specific thing, and that's because of their ability to analyze and break down that thing. But that might not, it might not be innate to them to have generally great approaches for improving in general. Their ability is more specific. People are very different, and a lot of players will be naturally focusing on the right things that a lot of other players won't have the sense to do. And for some players, they'll be naturally focusing on the right things just instinctively. Like, it's just natural and obvious to them. And that's really what makes them talented in many respects. But there are lots of pro players that will kind of only get so far. They'll get stuck in certain places.
They will plateau.
Their mechanics will get stuck, or their decision making will get stuck, and they'll run into walls. And the thing is that's where coaching is really beneficial, obviously, because a coach's job is to understand all of the things. And then they don't want to burden players with that understanding that they have. That, I'm talking about all of these different concepts, like aiming is breathing and 4 stages of competency. But they don't need to know any of that. What the players need to know is what they need to do and how they need to do it. That's all they really need to know. So when you have a good coach is going to understand not just the theory, but how it actually works to integrate the theory into practices that the players can do, that the coaches can guide them through, that helps them to solve the problem. That's really how that's supposed to work. So when I'm saying all of this stuff and there is that question out there of, well, pros don't need to know these things. That is largely true, but a lot of my content has always been about understanding how all of this stuff works, because there is a large population of players that do actually want that information, because they might be people that are able to be talented in other ways, and they might need a bit of a boost in this area and understanding where to focus or how to think about certain things. So I don't know, I'm starting to do like what I feel like are lectures, but if this is helpful, let me know. It feels like, this stuff is pretty niche, but honestly, if it helps a few people, I think that's really, really awesome. So with that said, stay tuned as well, because I think today's Thursday. So tomorrow I'll be dropping the video where I'll be talking about just an aim training challenge for my community. So if that's something that you want to take part in, make sure that you check that video out. Again, it should be going up tomorrow. Well, it will be going up tomorrow as
nice.
So, all right. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.
I dig it. Yeah, man. I like when Daniel puts out like the aim train shit. Just because he's like trying to push the whole. He's just creating more conversations around aim training and whatnot, and I think that's good. Trying to convince more pros to take up aim training. We're still, aim training is like very new concept, kind of, like relatively. It's been around for like a couple years now, and some people think it works, some people don't think it works. And it's just gonna be a matter of time until people start to realize, oh shit, I need to fucking aim train. It's only a matter of time. But yeah, I mean, I thought this was a good video, and I can't wait to see more. And I mean, I like the whole thing with like the Valorant thing. I mean, when in doubt, just hang up the mouse and plug in a roller and just be a console Valorant pro. I mean, because that's gonna be a thing now. And if you're against it, you probably shouldn't be. But I mean, anyway, good video. Can't wait to see the next one. And yeah, that's pretty much it for me. Catch you guys on the next one. Later.